What if I told you the world's most iconic sneaker company was started by a guy who had no money, no factory, no investors, and was selling shoes out of the trunk of his car? We're talking about Nike. $51 billion in annual revenue. The shoe on the foot of LeBron, Serena, Ronaldo. The brand that turned "just do it" into a religion. But here's what nobody tells you. Nike's founder Phil Knight failed for the first 7 years. He was rejected by every investor. His first business partner quit. And the Japanese manufacturer he built everything on tried to destroy him. This is not a success story. This is a survival story. And by the end of this video, you'll understand exactly how Nike went from zero to $1 billion, step by step, year by year, decision by decision. Stick around, because the playbook they used, you can steal it. Section 1, The Origin, a crazy idea and a suitcase full of shoes. Let's go back to 1962. Phil Knight is a 24-year-old accounting student at Stanford. Not a visionary. Not a mogul. Just a kid who liked to run. He'd been a decent middle-distance runner at Oregon under legendary coach Bill Bowerman, the same man who would later become his business partner. But Knight wasn't obsessing over shoes yet. He was working on a class paper. Asterisk. The paper was titled, "Can Japanese Sports Shoes Do to German Sports Shoes What Japanese Cameras Did to German Cameras?" At the time, the American sneaker market was dominated by German brands, Adidas and Puma. Knight's thesis was simple. Japan could make athletic shoes just as well, at a fraction of the cost. He wrote the paper. Got an A. And then, unlike every other business student in history, he actually went and tried it. In 1962, Phil Knight flew to Japan with $50 in his pocket. He walked into the offices of Onitsuka Tiger, a Japanese shoe manufacturer, and flat out lied. He told them he represented a U.S. distribution company called Blue Ribbon Sports. That company didn't exist. He made it up on the spot. The audacity of this moment cannot be overstated. He had no company, no money, no track record. Just conviction. And somehow, it worked. Onitsuka Tiger agreed to send him sample pairs to review. Knight flew home. Sent those samples to his old coach Bill Bowerman. Bowerman put them on. Looked at them. And said, "I can make these better." And with that, Blue Ribbon Sports was born. January 25, 1964. Phil Knight invested $500. Bill Bowerman invested $500. Total startup capital, $1,000. Section 2, The First Customer. Selling from a car boot. Now here's where most business stories skip ahead to the success. We're not doing that. Because what happened next is the most important part. Blue Ribbon Sports had no store. No website. This is 1964. No marketing budget. No staff. It was literally just Phil Knight driving to track meets across the Pacific Northwest and selling Tiger shoes out of the back of his car. His first store was the trunk of a green Plymouth Valiant. He'd set up at high school and college track meets on weekends, lay the shoes out, and talk to runners. And runners loved them. Because Knight wasn't selling to casual buyers, he was selling to people who understood the difference a good shoe made. He knew his customer, because he was his customer. Year 1 revenue, $8,000. That's it. $8,000. Split between 2 partners. He was still working a day job as an accountant. Bowerman was still coaching at Oregon. This was a side hustle. But Knight had something that most entrepreneurs miss in the early days. He had obsessive product focus and a hyper-specific customer. He wasn't trying to sell to everyone. He was selling to runners. Serious runners. People who cared deeply about performance. That specificity is what kept him alive long enough to grow. By 1965, he hired his first employee, Jeff Johnson, a runner he met at a track meet who loved the shoes so much he basically begged for a job. Johnson became employee number 1 and opened Blue Ribbon Sports' very first physical store in Santa Monica, California in 1966. Revenue by 1966, $44,000. They were growing. But the real trouble was just beginning. Section 3, The First Big Failure, The Manufacturer Betrayal. Here's the brutal part of the Nike story that most people glossed over. By the late 1960s, Blue Ribbon Sports was entirely dependent on Onitsuka Tiger. Every shoe they sold was made by Onitsuka. They had no leverage, no alternatives, and Onitsuka knew it. In 1971, Phil Knight got a tip from a source inside Onitsuka. The company was quietly negotiating with other U.S. distributors. They were planning to cut Blue Ribbon Sports out entirely. After almost a decade of building the brand, growing sales, and making Onitsuka famous in America, they were about to be dumped. Knight had a choice: beg Onitsuka to stay, or burn the bridge and build his own brand. He chose war. But to fight, he needed a shoe. He approached a Japanese trading company called Nisho Iwai and negotiated a deal to manufacture his own footwear. He needed a name. He needed a logo. He had about 48 hours and almost no budget. The logo, the iconic swoosh, was designed by a graphic design student named Carolyn Davidson for $35. Knight wasn't even sure he liked it. He told her, "I don't love it, but it'll grow on me." That $35 logo is now worth billions. The name came from employee Jeff Johnson, who dreamed it. Nike, the Greek goddess of victory. On June 18, 1971, Blue Ribbon Sports officially became Nike Incorporated. They launched their own shoe line, and within a year, Onitsuka Tiger was gone. The brand they'd been dependent on for nearly a decade had been replaced entirely by something they owned. That betrayal was the best thing that ever happened to them. Section 4. From $10,000 to $1 million. The Waffle and the Athlete. Now let's talk about how Nike actually scaled. Because having your own brand is one thing. Making it the best is another. This is where Bill Bowerman comes back into the story in a massive way. One Sunday morning in 1971, Bowerman was eating breakfast with his wife. He looked down at the waffle iron and had a thought that would change athletic footwear forever. He poured rubber into the waffle iron. He was trying to create a shoe sole that gave runners better grip and cushioning. The waffle iron produced a grid-like pattern on the rubber, and when he attached that to a shoe, it worked. Runners were faster, more comfortable, less injured. The waffle trainer launched in 1974. It became Nike's first mass breakout product. But product alone doesn't build a billion-dollar company. Distribution does. And Nike's next masterstroke was understanding that athletes were their best marketers. In 1973, Nike signed their first major athlete, Steve Prefontaine. Pre was the most exciting distance runner in America. Charismatic, rebellious, beloved. He wore Nikes. He talked about Nikes. He became the soul of the brand. Nike's revenue in 1972, $1.96 million. Nike's revenue in 1974, $4.8 million. Nike's revenue in 1976, $14 million. They were doubling and tripling every 2 years. But the athlete strategy was just getting started. The formula was becoming clear. Build a technically superior product. Get the best athletes in the world to wear it. Let the performance speak for itself. No celebrity fluff. No fake endorsements. Real athletes, real results. And then came running. Section 5. The running boom and the road to $100 million. In the mid-1970s, something remarkable happened in America. The running boom. Millions of regular people started jogging for fitness. Jim Fixx published The Complete Book of Running in 1977, and it became a phenomenon. Suddenly, everyone needed running shoes. And Nike, which had spent years building credibility with serious runners, was perfectly positioned. This is a masterclass in timing and brand equity. Nike hadn't marketed to casual joggers. They'd built a reputation with elite athletes and hardcore runners. When the mainstream caught up, those regular people wanted what the real runners wore. Nike's revenue in 1978, $71 million. Nike's revenue in 1979, $149 million. They crossed $100 million in revenue in just over a decade from founding. But 1979 brought a crisis. Adidas was still dominant in many categories. And a scrappy new competitor named Reebok was about to explode with the aerobics trend. Nike was a running brand, and aerobics was for a different customer. For the first time, Nike started losing market share. By 1987, Reebok had actually overtaken Nike as the #1 athletic shoe brand in America. Phil Knight was pushed aside from day-to-day operations briefly. The company nearly lost its identity. And then came the two decisions that changed everything. Section 6. The two bets that built the billion-dollar brand. Bet number 1. Michael Jordan. In 1984, Nike was struggling. Reebok was on the rise. Nike's basketball presence was almost non-existent. Then a young agent named David Falk came to them with a 21-year-old rookie named Michael Jordan. Jordan didn't want Nike. He wanted Adidas. Nike wasn't his first choice, or his second. But Nike offered something nobody else could match, a signature shoe line with his name on it and a revenue share. The Air Jordan deal. $2.5 million over 5 years, plus royalties. The NBA banned the original Air Jordans for not meeting uniform requirements. Nike paid the $5,000 per game fine willingly. Because every time a referee stopped the game to cite Jordan's shoes, it was free press. Air Jordan won revenue in its first year, $126 million from one shoe, in 12 months. Bet number 2, Just Do It. In 1988, Nike launched one of the most famous advertising campaigns in history. The tagline, Just Do It, was created by ad agency Whedon plus Kennedy, inspired, bizarrely, by the last words of a convicted murderer. The campaign didn't just sell shoes. It sold a philosophy. It told every person watching, athlete or not, that the only thing stopping them was themselves. Nike's revenue in 1987, $877 million. Nike's revenue in 1989, $1.7 billion. They crossed $1 billion in revenue within 2 years of Just Do It. The campaign didn't just advertise products, it built a movement. And movements don't die. Section 7. The Real Lessons. What Nike actually teaches you. Okay, let's zoom out. Because here's what I actually want you to take away from this. Nike's path from $0 to $1 billion wasn't luck. It was a repeatable formula. And here are the exact lessons. Lesson 1. Start with a niche, dominate it, then expand. Nike didn't try to be everything to everyone. They were a running brand for serious runners for over a decade. That credibility is what let them expand into basketball, training, and eventually every sport on earth. If you try to serve everyone first, you serve no one. Lesson 2. Your product is your marketing. The waffle trainer wasn't promoted by a celebrity. It was adopted because it worked. When your product is genuinely better, athletes talk. Runners tell other runners. Real performance is the best advertisement. Lesson 3. Crises create opportunities. Onitsuka Tiger's betrayal forced Nike to create their own brand. The Reebok challenge forced them to innovate harder and find Jordan. Every near-death moment in Nike's story led to a breakthrough. Don't just survive your setbacks, mind them. Lesson 4. Athletes are media channels. Before social media, Nike understood that putting their shoe on the right person was worth more than any TV ad. Jordan. Later, Tiger Woods, Ronaldo, Serena. The athlete doesn't just sell the shoe, they transfer their identity to the brand. Lesson 5. Brand is compounding. Just Do It was launched in 1988. It still runs today. Every ad they've ever made has added to the same emotional bank account. Consistent brand identity compounds just like financial interest, slowly at first, then powerfully. Lesson 6. Distribution first, then scale. Knight's decision to sell at track meets, to go direct to the runners, to be physically present where his customers were, that wasn't primitive, it was genius. He understood his customer before he understood his business. Phil Knight didn't start Nike because he had funding. He didn't start it because he had a warehouse or a factory or a distribution deal. He started it because he had a belief that better athletic shoes were possible, and he was willing to be embarrassed, rejected, and broke for years while he figured it out. From a $1,000 handshake in 1964 to $1 billion in 1989. 25 years. 2 partners, thousands of failures, 1 waffle iron, 1 logo that cost $35, 1 athlete named Michael, and 3 words. Just do it. The most powerful businesses in the world usually start in a car trunk. So next time someone tells you your idea is too small, remember Phil Knight driving to track meets in a Plymouth Valiant with a box of Japanese running shoes. If you found this story valuable, hit like, subscribe, and drop a comment below. Which part of Nike's story surprised you the most? And if you want to see how other legendary companies, Apple, Zara, Amazon, went from zero to empire, I've got those stories lined up. Don't miss them. See you in the next one.